Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing another super chill swatch with me video. The first one that I did on Daniel Smith got such a warm reception here on the channel that I wanted to make sure I turned around and gave you another one fairly quickly here. I had a lot of fun at filming it as well. So today we are going to be taking a look at the Holbein Watercolors. Now believe it or not, this is the next brand of paint that I have the most samples of, but that is all thanks to another artist and YouTuber who goes by the name of Otocano. I apologize if I am saying that wrong. I asked her for pronunciation, but it is the middle of the night where she lives right now, so I haven't received an answer back yet. But anyway, she's another great artist. You can go ahead and check out her channel. I'll put a link up in the corner and in the description below, so you can go ahead and check out her new YouTube channel. But she provided me with these absolutely beautiful, I mean, it's essentially a dot card, but they're in palettes. She took the time to put all of the samples of paint out in the palette, and then she has all of the information for them from the number that the company refers to them as, their common name, the pigments in the paints, and then as well as light fastness and opacity. She did this with, I believe, 53 colors. It's across 3 different palettes that we're going to be taking a look at. And I also have a couple of others from Tiffany, who you guys all know me talking about Tiffany. She was able to give me these samples. A lot of them are mostly used, and so I'll have to really try to get enough paint out of them for our little sample areas, but I have a full review on Holbein, or at least a first impressions look on Holbein, and these are the colors that are featured in that video. So if you missed that one, I'll go ahead and put that up there for you as well. And we talked about them a little bit in the vegan watercolor review as well, because they are one of the vegan brands of paint aside from Ivory Black, which I don't have here today. So we'll be all in the clear. So we were pretty lucky in that the colors that I got from Tiffany and the colors that I got from Otocano were pretty much non-overlapping. There were 2 colors that were the same, but other than that, all of the colors are completely unique. So we have quite a few that we are going to be taking a look at today. We're going to be starting off with Cadmium Yellow Light, and we're just going to be going through, again, if you missed the Daniel Smith video, just painting these out so you can see these colors in person. And these are also going to be my first impressions of literally every color in this palette, except for those 2 that I mentioned that I tried from Tiffany. So I'm really excited to get to see more of Holbein's line. I know that there are a lot of artists here on YouTube that really love their paints, including Eve and Maria. I haven't used them as much, but I am excited to get to know them a little bit better. And with the sample sizes of paint that she included here, I'll be able to do several paintings, many paintings, depending on the color schemes, with the colors that they have provided to me. So let me go ahead and zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. I think I can paint in this position and that it won't kill my arm too much. I know that was an issue last time, so I'm trying to take it slow and make sure that everything is good to go this time around. There might be a little bit of rattling from the plastic palette hitting the table, and I apologize for that. I'll try and keep that to a minimum. But yeah, I am excited to sit back and look at these colors with you. So the first color that I swatched there is a kind of middle of the road yellow. It's Cadmium Yellow Light, made from PY35, and if I'm not mistaken, that is a true cadmium color. Holbein is really interesting because you're going to see today, or I mean you can already see it written out on this sheet here, that there are so many multi-pigment colors from them, which honestly I think has been something that has been a little off-putting to me about Holbein, and why I haven't been as curious to try them before now. And well then, my goodness, street noise is loud today. It is Sunday afternoon, maybe people are out and about. But anyway, the multi-pigment blends that Holbein has have been a little bit off-putting for me to try the brand, just because I like knowing what are in my paints and I like knowing how reliable they are going to be to mix. But Holbein have really beautiful colors, very highly saturated colors, and ones that are, they just have a lot of punch to them. They don't have a ton of granulation or texture across most of the colors, although there are some granulating colors that we will get to for sure. And yeah, If you guys use Holbein, I know we're early in the video here, but if you guys use Holbein and like them, let me know in the comments below. If you have any favorite colors by them, hopefully we'll come across them today. Now, so far, I've got these 3 colors here, and they look fairly different in the palette. We've got, I mean, these two maybe look a little bit similar, but this one is much more warm. This one looks totally different, but on paper, they all actually look fairly similar. I hold this up perpendicular to my eyesight real quick and see if I can tell any differences for you. The one in the middle seems to be a little bit more transparent, but other than that, pretty similar. It also has an interesting name. This is called Gamboge Nova, and I did forget to look that up before I started filming. I did have to look up quite a few pigments because a lot of the pigments in the mixtures here are not ones that I'm familiar with. So that's quite interesting, but when we get to those, I will try and mention them. So far, I think most of these are ones that you'll probably be familiar with, like PY 154 is my favorite shade of yellow. It's very middle of the road yellow. PY 150 is Nickel Azo yellow. The PY 74 comes up quite a few times in the Holbein line, and that is Aralide yellow. It's also called Hansa Yellow Medium by some brands, but it's not the same one as Daniel Smith's. Daniel Smith's is 97. I'm trying to get up. There's like fuzz on my my paper here, and it's not working. I am using a silver black velvet brush today, and it's in size 6. It's in a size 6, and I am using the Arteza watercolor paper. I'm going to be having a full review on them probably later this week or next week after I get acquainted with them, but Arteza did send me a couple of supplies to get to know and show you guys on the channel. But again, I'll have more information on that soon. This yellow is much cooler than the other ones. It is still a 3 pigment blend, though a lot of their yellows are 2 or 3 colors. It's really interesting because this is a middle yellow, this is a middle yellow. I don't know what PY 111 was. I couldn't find it on handprint. I don't know if it's close to PY 110 or whatnot, but it must be a cooler yellow because the rest of these pigments are pretty middle of the road. Let's see, we've got lemon yellow next. And for the most part, these colors are going to be in order of the way that she sent them to me. I did insert the, I believe it's 16 colors that I got from Tiffany that, or no, it's going to be 14 colors, unique colors from Tiffany that I added in because I already had 2 of them. It's from the 18 color set, but I also didn't take white or black from her when I was visiting. And those have an asterisk by them. So anytime you see an asterisk on the page, that is one that came from Tiffany. The rest, our other artist picked out herself. They didn't come from a set. They were purchased open stock. So now I have to remember to go back over to my Tiffany palette. Sorry, I'm off camera here a little bit. You guys may have noticed already how easy it is to pick up Holbein watercolors. They re-wet really, really gorgeously. You know, honestly, I think I've always been a little intimidated by the fact that I don't know exactly what are in all the colors, and I like predictability, I'll put it that way. I like predictability, and so if I know what pigments are in paints, I'm more likely to go and grab them and use them because I know how they're going to behave when I mix them with other colors, if that makes sense. So this is the permanent yellow deep. This is going to be similar to like a Hansa yellow deep. It's a little bit more on the yellow side. And so we mentioned that PY 74 is Aralide yellow and PY 83 is Diaralide yellow. I may be saying those wrong, but close enough. I'm sure you can figure out the gist. This is cadmium yellow deep, so this should be a similar hue. It's a little more orange. And I didn't look up PO20. I think that's cadmium orange. I don't have any cadmium colors on my normal palettes, and so I'm not as familiar with their pigment numbers, but I think that's what that is, which means this is a combination of 2 cadmium colors, and so it's going to be a lot more opaque than some of our other versions that we've been looking at today. Permanent yellow orange. This looks like a pretty fiery orange. Slightly, just a tiny bit more stubborn to pick up paint than some of the other ones that we've used. Yeah, there we go. Tiffany and Victor will be happy. That is a fiery, fiery orange. It's quite beautiful. So this Arteza paper, as far as I know, it's a cellulose paper, a wood pulp paper, but I've only done a couple paintings on them, like little sketches, not even full paintings, and it seems to be holding up pretty well, which means I'm pretty excited to be trying it out, and then sharing my thoughts with you on that. They did offer me an affiliates link, which is exciting. I know you guys have probably been seeing a lot of Arteza around YouTube, and the company did offer me like a commissions link similar to the Amazon affiliates program. So if you are interested in picking up any of those Arteza products that you've seen, either this paper or from other YouTubers, if they have links, I mean, use their links. I don't want to poach their views or anything like that, but feel free to use those links in the description. They also sent me some water brushes and some fine liners. So the water brushes will be in the same video when I review the paper, and then the fine liners will be in my bullet journal video later this month to set up for March. Now, here's Quinn Gold. Oh God, we skipped this one, I'm sorry. So cadmium yellow orange is another cadmium color. This is actually cadmium red though, and I don't know a lot about PR 108, but I do know that it's typically red, so I'm a little curious on how they got it to be so orange. I don't know if that's something common that a lot of other brands do, but I was very intrigued. It shows up in so many colors from them, so we're going to see lots of variations of that pigment. What I was going to say is here's our quinacridone gold, and I know a lot of you ask me like what my favorite alternatives for quinacridone gold are, and I honestly haven't tried too many of the reformulations. I did get to try this color a long time ago. It was a sample from I ordered something online and it came with it, or maybe, you know what, actually I think I got it from my local art store. They had a couple of the little tiny tubes when you made a purchase. So I had tried this before. I don't know what happened to the tube. I assume that I gave it to another artist friend or another YouTuber friend, so it's off in the world somewhere. But this one's actually pretty nice. It's not too yellow, which a big problem that I have with a lot of the reformulations for quinacridone gold is that when you tint them out, they get really, really yellow. So we'll see how this dries, but so far it looks really nice. All right, Brilliant Orange. I'm just double checking to make sure I'm on the right swatch here. It's gonna be a really, 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 really fiery orange, guys. Oh boy. Oh, that's even more fluorescent than I was expecting. Holy camole. Sorry if there's a glare there. Try and fix it after I paint out the swatch. turn this. There we go. That's a little bit better anyway. PO73 is Pyro Orange. PO62 is Azo Orange, I believe. So this must be the oranger version of this color, the one that's really, really fiery. Got a hair there, but I'm just gonna mess this up more. Quick, quick, let's try and fix it. It's slightly opaque, but I am seeing that with a lot of the colors like cadmium yellow light, even though it was opaque when it went on, it dried pretty transparently, so maybe that'll happen with this other color. Next we have Cad Red Orange, which again is using that PR108. On the palette, this looks like this one. It's going to be another very bright orange. This one has a little bit more of an earthiness to it. Y'all know I'm not a huge orange fan in terms of the bright oranges. I like earth oranges. But this is a nice color. It reminds me a little bit, like a tiny bit, of Daniel Smith's transparent Pyro Orange, in the sense that I think it would make really good dark tones. This one, of course, is going to be more opaque, but it has some nice texture to it, too. I hope that it keeps that as it dries. Next is Vermilion Hue, and this is going to be the hardest color for me to try and get a swatch out of. I only have a teeny tiny little dot of it, and I want to make sure that I don't pick up the other color that it's sharing in that well for the purposes of this video. So let me just work at this for just a moment. I have the palette tilted, and I'm trying to pull the color up onto the edge there. So this again is made from the PO73, but we also have a Pyro Red in there, and then our PY110. There we go, we got enough to make a swatch out of it. And I'm pretty sure that's not contaminated. The other color sharing that well is a lot more well, you'll see it in a little bit. It's a lot more purple though. Alright, and now we have Pyro Red on its own, that PR254. This is a color I'm very familiar with. It's on my main palette. I've used both Winsor & Newton and Daniel Smith's versions. For Daniel Smith's, just a tiny bit to Winsor & Newton. This one is actually quite, it has a little bit of a cool bias to it. The one that I have on my main palette, I might try and show you that real quick. Or, you know what? I've got my Daniel Smith ones here. I should have it on there. Pull that out and show you the slight difference. Definitely like a fire truck red here. Let me pull out my Daniel Smith sheets for you. It's going to be a little hard because it's in the middle of the sheet, so I can't put them directly next to each other. But here's Daniel Smith's Pyro Red, and then here's Holbein's. And it's hard probably to tell on the camera. This one has like a flatter mass tone, but it's definitely leaning a tiny bit more on the orange side. And then this one, especially when you tint it out, you can see the coolness of it a little bit better. So we'll see how that dries. I love we've got a little section here that's all single pigment colors. So that was the Pyro Red, now we've got Quinacridone Red. And this looks pretty Quinacridone Rose to me. I don't think we have a Quinacridone Rose, so that PB19, as most of you guys know, is a very, very fluctuating color. It can go anywhere from a red to a purple. And this very much looks like Quinacridone Rose to me. Quinacridone Red, even made with the same pigment, tends to be a little bit more neutral. So, definitely a Quin Rose. I wonder if I have that on here. Let me just double check really quickly. I don't. Do I have it on my other one? Okay, here's this is the Daniel Smith color chart that I have from the dot chart. I did this years and years ago. So Quin Rose is over here, and Quin Red is right here, and they're not terribly different, but you can definitely tell this is more pink and this is more red biased. And this one to me looks a lot more like the quinacridone rose, especially in person. It's got a lot more blue in it. All right, next up we've got two back-to-back PR 108 versions, starting with Cadmium Red Purple. So I'm guessing this is just a cooler version. It definitely in no way is purple. So it just must lean a little bit towards that cooler side. I would still say that's a pretty warm red. I don't love it, but I don't think that should surprise anyone since I don't typically use cadmium colors to begin with. Next we have Cad Red Deep. This one looks, at least in the palette, it looks a little bit more like a Pyrrole Red to me. Yep. So it's really interesting because the Cad Red Purple actually looks more orange to me. This looks more middle of the road red, but I wonder if it'll change when they dry. Oh, I almost skipped a color. That would have been bad. Next we have Quinacridone Scarlet. This is PR 209. This one looks pretty cool on the palette. I don't know, okay, that looks like PR 209 to me. It's this very luminous, transparent color, and I still don't really know what to use it for. I didn't have any of this color, and then I got like an explosion of it, of samples that you guys have all sent me. And I can show you, I've got Daniel Smith's right here. They call theirs Quin Coral. It's pretty comparable. I'm sure that when that dries, they'll look very, very similar. All right, moving up here, we've got Scarlet Lake. So this is another combination of colors that we've already seen. So PO73, 254, and PB19. It looks very, very, very middle red as well. Very similar to these two colors, at least on the palette. It's interesting. It's a really interesting color. It has the same type of luminosity that the Quin Scarlet does. And again, Quin Scarlet is definitely not the name comparatively to other watercolors that I would call this, because scarlet typically refers to an orange or red, and this one is definitely more of a magenta pink red. But this Scarlet Lake here is more middle of the road. It has this really glowing type of property to it that this PR 209 has. It doesn't feel as heavy as some of these other cadmium colors do. I think it would lie somewhere between these two, actually. That's interesting. All right, next up we have Opera. And I have two Operas. They're separated on the palettes. I'm not sure why they're separate, but there's Opera and then there's Brilliant Rose, which is down here, and both of those are similar opera-y type colors. This is made with a dye, so we've got BV10, there's a BV11, there's a BV7, and a BV15, all on the Holbein chart, and those are all fluorescent dyes, and they are not light fast. So just keep that in mind. If you're using this for work, it should either be like in a journal. I know a lot of journalers like this color, or it should be on something that you're going to reproduce right away. So scan it, take a picture of it so you can reproduce it, but the original is not going to hold. For that reason, I don't have Opera Rose on my main palette. I know that there have been some really great videos here on YouTube explaining and showing like the value of this color and how it makes these really beautiful shades when you mix them with other colors, but honestly I haven't even gone down that road because I do so much work that I sell for the originals and new commissions that I just don't want to have non-Lightfast colors on my palette. I don't work in that shade anyway, and so I feel like there's other colors that I can use instead. Oh my gosh, this color is so beautiful. This is their permanent alizarin crimson, and it's a really deep, cool red. And I noticed this when I was writing out the pigments, is that there are a lot of mixtures in Holbein that use PBR 25, which if you saw my top 5 browns video, you will know that that is one of my favorite browns. It's a really beautiful deep reddish brown color, and I actually just added it to my main palette. I finally had a spot open up, and I am excited to see the mixes that it makes across these different paint colors because they seem to favor it in a lot of mixes. But that's a beautiful color. Just double check light fastness here. So it's rated as good. Let me show you here. She has it as a 3 out of 4, and then it's also transparent, so that's not too bad when you're looking at a color like that. I'll take a 3 out of 4. Okay, we are done with this one. So I'm going to move this off to the side. Have a couple more reds to show you from our Tiffany palette. So this one here is Rose Madder, is what they call it, but this is the original pigment for alizarin crimson, so we'll get to see a little bit of a comparison here. It's in the same boat that I'm in with the vermilion hue on the other side, that there's just this teeny tiny little bit because I've already used a lot of it. I'm trying to get up enough of it to give you a good swatch. So I'm not sure why they don't call this alizarin crimson, especially since they have a permanent alizarin crimson. You can see that this version is just a tiny bit more on the red side. It's a little less cool than their permanent alizarin crimson version. There we go. Try not to make a lot of noise. The porcelain palette's pretty heavy. And I do remember from swatching these out before when I did the review that this one is not quite as vibrant or luminous as Winsor & Newton's alizarin crimson. It might not have intentionally, it might have intentionally been different, I don't know. But not quite as deep or as vibrant as the only other PR 83 that I've seen in person. All right, and then we have Crimson Lake, also from Tiffany palette. This is a very magenta-y color. It's made from PR 177, which is anthraquinone red, PR 122, which is quinacridone magenta, and PV 19, which is that quinacridone red or rose. I feel like they made more work for themselves. I can only imagine like being in a paint factory and like you have all these formulations of these colors. You'd think that it would be less work for them if they just made single pigment or dual pigment colors, but there must be some draw. I don't know if it's a financial draw or a visual draw that they really wanted to make these formulations more complicated. Oops. All right, we're in our last 2 rows here. Hoping that the screen is still nice for you. It's a little bit dull on my monitor, but I did do a test run before filming this, or pressing record, and it should be nice and balanced for you. Alright, so we're on to palette 2, which is purples and blues. So we're going to start with quinacridone violet. So quinacridone violet there's a version with PV19, and there's also a version with PV55, which is much newer. This is the PV19 version. And this looks like the other really, I mean, I don't have a lot of PV19s that are this purple, but the other one, I think I have 2 other ones that look very similar to this one. It's a really neat color. Very, very cool, very transparent. When I say cool, I mean cool for a magenta, or very, very warm, obviously, for a purple. I guess it depends a lot on your perspective there. Next we have Quin Magenta, which is the PR122. We mentioned that before. And quinacridone magenta can either be PR122 or PR202. And I don't know a lot of the differences between those 2 colors. They're very, very similar. And I do want to do some more research on that, possibly for the Color Spotlight series. We are super, super close to hitting our next goal on Patreon that would unlock me doing another 8-episode run of the Color Spotlight series. And I was considering colors to include there. My patrons will have the final vote on what colors go through out of the ones that I give them as options. And I'm looking at the differences between those 2 because they're both colors that I use and they're both really beautiful, but I don't know the differences. All right, here's our other Opera Rose. This is the Bright Rose, made from BV11. And another odd one, AB83. And I couldn't find a lot on this, but there was a conversation, like a thread on Wet Canvas, which is like a message board, forums, there we go. It's a forum for painters, and there was some speculation that this just might be a proprietary paint, which means it's specific to Holbein, and it might be a variation of PR83. Again, I don't, like, none of that is confirmed. I'm not saying that as fact here, but that was the speculation that was going on over there. But either way, not a light fast color at all. I do like this tone better than I like Opera. Opera is so, so bright and so fluorescent that it's just not in my typical wheelhouse. Then we have one more with dyes. This is Bright Violet, also not a light fast color. I do like that Holbein does rate their colors, like a rating of 1 is called fugitive. It's not like, oh, this isn't great light fastness. They get straight to the point. They tell you it's fugitive, it's not going to stay this color. So it is nice. This is a really beautiful color, but I feel like it's very similar to some other purples that I've seen. PV55 is very similar to this. So if you want a light fast color that's similar to this, I would look at PV55. This one is a bit more pink, but I don't know, the light fastness is a problem for me, like I mentioned before. All right, the next one's called Permanent Violet. This is dioxazine violet though, it's PV23. Same one we are familiar with from many, many brands. I'll try and go back in for a deeper version, but this does not look very pigmented right off the bat. Fill in the square first, a rectangle, and I'll go get another dip. Yep, it's not as pigmented as some other versions, but maybe they intended it to be that way since they have so many bright colors. This is typically a richer, darker version. I also have Mineral Violet from the Tiffany palette, and this is one of my favorite purples I've ever seen, just in terms of the color. It's really, really, really gorgeous. It is made from 3 different pigments though, although each of those pigments are fairly light fast. I don't have, did I write it down? I don't think I wrote down the light fastness for these colors that I got from Tiffany. So I don't know what the light fastness is on this one, but it's a beautiful, slightly warm middle purple that is just really gorgeous. Big fan of this color. At least on its own. I haven't used it much in paintings. All right, next one I'm kind of excited about. I have not used this color before. It's PV47. It's Cobalt Violet Light. And I did double check handprint, and this is Cobalt Violet. It's just not widely available. I did mess up the pigment number here, but it's PV47 in case you are wondering. It's beautiful. I love this color. It's like a very soft, transparent lavender. I know there's a bunch of new colors out from like Shinhan and Daniel Smith and all these really pastel light colors, and those have white in them though, so I'm not a huge fan unless we're talking about adding them to a gouache palette, which would be fine. But this looks similar in tone to those, but it's totally transparent and it's granulating and it looks super gorgeous. It's not a strong color. It's definitely on the weaker end of things. I'll try and, yep, even if I drop like straight pigment up here, it's not going to be super dark, but look at this. It's already granulating so much. It's not even halfway dry yet. All right, next we have Cerulean Blue, and this is actual Cerulean Blue at PV35. It's a very pale blue color, should also granulate. I really love Holbein's single pigment colors. And a couple of their other ones, but I just wish there were more of them. They do pretty well with the earth tones. We haven't gotten there obviously yet, but they do a really good job with their earth tones being single pigment colors. If you don't already know, Holbein is known for not having super flowy paints. They do not add Oxcon. They believe that should be your choice as the artist. So we have kind of a weird thing color-wise. It went straight from the Cerulean Blue to some really dark blue colors, and then we'll come back to our lighter blues on the next page. But this is what they call indigo. Typically PB60 would be indigo, which is right next door. This is a combination between phthalo blue, lamp black, and quinacridone magenta. Oops. The wrong color there. It's a beautiful deep blue. I think I'm not super attached to indigo, so I don't have super strong feelings, but I know there are a lot of people who are and would be like, this is an indigo. Why would you call this indigo? But I think it's a really beautiful color in and of itself. Very transparent. And we should get a little bit of granulation from the lamp black. Next up we have our PV60. They call theirs Royal Blue. This would be Indian Throne. Oh, you know what? I guess I'm wrong about indigo. Indigo would be like a Indian Throne plus a black. So I guess it's not that far off. This would be Indian Throne or Anthraquinone Blue from M. Graham. a very bright version of this color. Seems to have more saturation but less value. Grab my other sheet real quick. Yeah, okay, so here's on Daniel Smith, you'll see indigo, it's PB60 with PBK6. So rather than using PBK60, they use the phthalo blue and then the quinacridone magenta. And let me get both of these on the camera. This one is much more blue, bluish green. This one is much more gray. If you want a comparison there. Prussian blue is in the 18 color set. I wrote it down wrong again, it's PB 27. I think after this sheet I'm going to give my Silver Black Velvet a little bit of a break and pick up a different brush. The tip is a little bit mad at me. Seems a little strained. This is a very, again, another saturated version of Prussian blue. It's not quite as mellow as some of the other versions I've seen. And then we've got Ultramarine Deep rounding off this page. And there's two ultramarine versions from them. Both of them, though, are both made from PB29. Neither one of them are mixes, so that's good. This one is a little bit on the purpley side. I think we're going to get some nice granulation out of that one too. So it's interesting, there's some colors that are still definitely drying on here. Some of our more fluorescent colors have already started to dry, but this one over here is still really wet. So we'll come back to this at the end when everything's had a chance to dry to look at them more closely. But for now, I'm going to set it off to the side. And we will start on page 2. You know, I think if it's possible, I'm going even slower in this video than I did in the Daniel Smith one. But we have a whopping 5 less colors on this one, so maybe we'll still get it done in a timely manner. Who knows? We've got 2 shades of phthalo blue to look at here, and they don't make a differentiation. They just call both of them PB15. But typically, phthalo blue red shade that we're going to be doing here is PB:6. PB15:6. Sorry, guys. And then the they call theirs yellow shade rather than green shade, which is what a lot of brands call theirs, and that would be 15:3. But again, they don't give us that information, so I don't know for sure. Holbein is one that's really hard to find their pigment information online. It's a little unfortunate. So I only know the pigment numbers for the ones I got from Tiffany because I wrote them down. And I've had some other people ask me since I did that review video, like where they could find the information, and I really don't know. I mean, you can go on Dick Blick or you can go on Jackson's and look at each individual paint, and then they'll tell you what the composition of each one is, but I don't know of the chart. If you have a chart or a link to a chart, feel free to put it down in the description or in the comments below and share it with everyone. Links will not automatically be approved, but I will go ahead and double check that and make sure to put it through if you are able to share a link for that. So here you can see the difference between these 2 shades. The yellow shade is definitely more on the green side. This one is much more similar to like an ultramarine in hue anyway. Not necessarily the properties of the paint, but this one I'm excited about. This is Marine Blue, and it's made from PB16, which is a single pigment phthalo turquoise. And I have this in My Mary Blue and in Winsor and Newton, thanks to Victor and was it Otacano who also sent me the Winsor Newton PB16? I think it was. She sent me these Holbein palettes, but she also sent me 3 extra tubes of paint. Sorry, it took me a minute to think about that. So I'm very grateful that she shared that with me because I think it's a beautiful color. I'm not sure why more companies don't use it. I guess it is rated 3 instead of 4 in light fastness, but this is very, very similar to my Daniel Smith Phthalo Turquoise, which is made from Phthalo Blue and Phthalo Green. Let me see if I can pull this up for you. Let me see these both. This one here. This one's slightly more blue, this one's slightly more green. It's real pretty. I love that color. Alright. We've got Cobalt Blue, and this is the genuine version with PB28. As a lot of you guys probably know, especially with student brands of paint, when they're trying to make a cobalt blue, they'll use an ultramarine and put white in it. This one is in fact just PB28. And then we also have, from the 18 color set, we have a Cobalt Blue Hue. So, I don't think these are very close in color to each other, but I put them next to each other on the color chart so we could see them. This one's made with ultramarine and phthalo blue, so yeah, it's not the same color. It's interesting they chose that name for it, especially when they offer the real deal. I understand not wanting cobalt colors. I don't like having cobalt colors on my palette, except for Cobalt Teal, which I had to forgive for its gorgeousness. But I try not to keep the cobalt cadmiums on my palette because I don't want toxic paints. But if you're going to offer a hue, I think it should at least match, be close to matching the real deal. Especially because Holbein does not seem to care if it adds white to its mixes. It has a lot of paint mixes that have white in them, so it is surprising that they wouldn't choose to put a white in that one. Alright, now we finally have Ultramarine Light, so we get to see what it looks like next to Ultramarine Deep. I feel like this is a much more greenish shade. It's much more neutral than the other ultramarine was. Again, sorry for messing up the pigment number here. There were a lot of them, guys. It wasn't just the colors, but it was like all these 3 pigment blends. It's a lot of numbers to be looking at. Grab this real quick. See that? Trying to get both of them on the camera. Can they both fit here? It's obviously going to have to dry some more, but the deep one here is much more warm. This one is much more neutral. Alright. Compose Blue is one of those mixtures I was saying has a white in it. Not my favorite color, but it is included in a lot of their sets, I believe. It's a color I believe the company is pretty fond of. This is from the Tiffany palette. Hopefully she doesn't mind that I'm calling it Tiffany palette over and over again. It's the 18 color set, guys. It is a nice sky blue. Oh, you know what? I said I was going to switch my brush at the turn of the page, didn't I? How did I get a whole other row ahead and forget to do that? So it's going to be a little bit more opaque since there is a white in it. Let's do a little switch here. Let's use, a lot of you guys were excited to see the Grace Art practice brushes in my brushes video last week, so let's go ahead and use this one. These are the really, really inexpensive brushes. that come in a pack of like 12 for like $8. I have a turquoise blue here, and I should have shown you before I started mixing it. It's separated pretty heavily. There was binder all around the outside, and our color here in the middle. This is made from phthalo green, phthalo blue, and white. I believe its goal is to make a faux turquoise color. Very opaque. It shouldn't really granulate because, unless they've added like a granulation medium to it, because neither of the pigments, at least, the blue and the green, have granulation in them. I don't know about the white, but I don't think it does. And then we have cobalt turquoise, which is from PB28. So this is similar to both M. Graham and Turner offered their cobalt teal is a PB28 instead of a PG50, which is more common like in Daniel Smith and Core. And this feels very similar to the Turner version, which is another Asian watercolor company. I don't remember if Turner is Japanese or Korean. You know, there's Shinhan, there's Holbein, and there's Turner that all come out of that region. This color will granulate because it's made from cobalt. Same pigment as its friend up here, but obviously treated differently so that you get another color from it. This one I'm really curious. This is called Manganese Blue Nova, but the color is listed as phthalo blue. I'm guessing there's a white in here that they didn't put down. You don't have to disclose white, but it's odd that they would tell you about the whites in their other mixtures, but not this one. But I don't know how this would be phthalo blue on its own. It looks like phthalo blue with white in it. It's kind of similar to Cinereous Blue, I think, from Sennelier, from what I remember. That's off of memory, not off of a swatch I'm looking at right now. Manganese blue is a very rare pigment these days. Not a lot of companies carry the original version of it. I am skipping one here in the palette to put cobalt green next to some of our other light blue colors, and then I'll get into the other greens. This is a really pretty seafoam green color. It is a mixture, obviously, but it's true Viridian, true cobalt, and a white pigment. It's gonna be opaque from that white, but that seafoam green is so pretty. Kind of looks like, do I have it here? Daniel Smith's Fuchsite is one of their Primatech colors. It's a lot lighter and it sparkles, so it's not going to be exactly the same, but it looks like it could be a cousin of that color. Kind of similar to the Amazonite Genuine, although the Amazonite Genuine is going to be a lot more transparent. But it's definitely an interesting shade there. Alright, then the last one off of this palette, we're backtracking back one spot to Hooker's Green. This is a bright Hooker's Green. They have a lot of really interesting green mixes. It's so bright. This looks like phthalo green yellow shade to me. Interesting that they would use 3 different pigments to get it when they could have started with PG36 and gotten pretty close to it with just adding a little bit of yellow. It's a bright, bright green. Alright, Moving on to our final palette here. We've got earth tones, greens, and then even a gold on this one. But first, we've got phthalo, it's phthalo green, but they call theirs Viridian Hue. And then I also have Viridian to show you from them. So this is the phthalo green. This looks like a very yellowish version of PG7. PG7 is phthalo green, blue shade, but this looks like a very yellow version of that color. It's not as deep or as rich as some of the other ones that I've seen. Once again, Daniel Smith chart here. Sorry to keep switching back and forth. I hope it's helpful. So this is phthalo blue, phthalo green blue shade, and then this is Holbein's version, but it looks very, very yellow in comparison. Alright, here's the true Viridian. Viridian is hard to work off of the palette, so it might take me a minute. I can put it in the screen if that helps you guys. It's not going to have as high of a tinting strength. I can tell you it's much easier to re-wet than like Daniel Smith's Viridian. Daniel Smith's Viridian dries like a rock. This one isn't easy, but it's not that difficult. Should granulate for us. Got sap green here. This looks like a nice color. Are you a nice sap green? That would be pleasant. It is. It's a little on the yellow side, but it's a pretty sap green color. Definitely more yellow than like my beloved Daniel Smith's or anything like that, but it's kind of like right in between Daniel Smith's sap green and their green gold, which I have both of on my like very first basic palette. And then we've got a couple of green mixtures that came in that 18 color set. They're called Permanent Green 2 and Permanent Green number 1. I don't really care for either of these colors. They're both a bit on the opaque side. I assume from the yellows. They just feel a little heavy and flat. I would never find a use for this color when I could just mix my own from a blue and a green. It's always so curious to me to see the colors that a company includes in their small sets, like a 12 or an 18 color set. Because I just feel like there's often so many better options out there that they could have included. And I wonder what goes behind making those decisions, or like who picks those, or I know that I work with a very specific palette since I do mostly animals and that that's not applicable to everyone. Like I'm very well aware of that, but I don't know any landscape painters who would use these greens over mixing their own either, so it's just interesting. Not bad, just interesting. And then we've got Leaf Green, which is made from PY 154 and PG 7. It's a very, very, very bright green. I think it is mostly PY 154 and just a teeny tiny bit of PG 7. There's very little difference between the mass tone and then the tinted out version. It's such a light color that it's hard to get a gradient that is easily visible. All right, we only got 2 more rows, everyone, plus a gold. But we're coming in here. This is greenish yellow. And the one thing that I do want to note is that when I was looking up some of the other pigment numbers on my sheet, handprint lists greenish yellow from Holbein as being like PY 117 or something strange like that. And that it's a color to avoid because it's fugitive, yada, yada, yada. And this color is obviously not made from that pigment anymore, so I assume they changed their formula somewhere along the line. You guys, I'm sorry, this color, it's just like, I understand it has its mixing purposes. It's similar but a lot more yellow than like an azo green, but it just looks like baby poop to me. I don't like this color. I know it's helpful for mixing, but I just can't get over it on its own is not a helpful color and not a pretty color, but it's hard for me to like want to add that to a palette, especially when it's made from 3 different colors, you know. I don't feel like that's super reliable. Interesting, the next color is olive green, and this is the same 3 pigments, but I suspect that there's a lot more of the PBR 25 in it. See, this one, also a different shade of baby poop green, but like, I feel like this one would have some uses at least. Like, I feel like it's a lot earthier and more applicable. I don't know, if you use either of these 2 colors or colors like them, let me know in the comments below what you use them for, because I'm really curious. I want to get better at using a variety of colors and really appreciating colors for their mixing purposes, but it's hard sometimes, you know. But yeah, I do like the olive green better than the yellowish green. Try and sap up a little water here. It's gonna bloom all over the place. All right, going back to the 18 color set, there's a One Brilliant. This is that really gross skin color that I don't agree with, but it's like a peachy color that has white in it. And even if you're painting Caucasian skin, I don't think you should use this color. I think you should mix your own. That'll give you better, more realistic results. I can see this being helpful maybe for like beaches or shells. I don't know what their One Brilliant 1 looks like. I haven't seen that, but it's a very opaque color. It's made from cadmium red, cadmium orange, and a white. So all 3 of those are opaque, and they're not going to be very luminous if you are trying to paint an accurate, translucent portrait. Next up I have Yellow Ochre. This is from the 18 color set. And this is from PY 42. And what's interesting is that the dot palette that I have here has a raw sienna that is made from another version of Yellow Ochre, PY 43, rather than it's typically made with PBR 7. It looks pretty hard too. I'm kind of surprised. If you look at this one next to the others, it doesn't shine like the other ones do, so we'll see how it is re-wetting. For the record, the PY 42 looks like the other Holbein paints. It's shiny. Both of these I feel like are more opaque than I would like them to be, and usually why you get a raw sienna over... Okay, that's not that bad. But usually why you get a raw sienna over Yellow Ochre is because you want more transparency. Okay, I do like the raw sienna better than the Yellow Ochre. The Yellow Ochre is one of the more opaque versions. Struggling with a graded wash on this one though. Hopefully that does okay. Burnt Sienna is one of the colors that was repeated. I don't think I mentioned, but the other one was the Permanent Yellow Light on the first page there. So I have both on this palette, and I guess I should have taken it off the Tiffany palette since... Wow. Totally freaking unnecessary. I'm on the second floor of a building fairly far into the property line, and that was all kinds of unnecessary. But anyway, that apartment life, gotta love it. Anyway, I should probably be taking the Burnt Sienna off of the Tiffany palette since I've used up more of those paints, and then eventually can reuse that palette for something else. But it's available to me on both fronts. It's a very orange version of this color. PBR 7, but a very, very orange leaning version of it. I just don't get why any vehicle on the street needs to be that loud. It's illegal, isn't it? He's like 2 blocks away, I can still hear him. I don't think you can hear him on the camera anymore, but my goodness gracious. Anyway, we've got Indian Red here next. This is PR 101. Should be an opaque color. It's a beautiful hue though. Oh my goodness, this is gorgeous. I hope it dries with this type of, like it's like a fiery, it's not vivid, it's not bright, but it's like this beautiful fiery Indian red color. I love it. It's totally gorgeous. Alright, Perylene Maroon. I know this is a lot of you guys' favorites. I know a lot of you mentioned it in my brown video. I don't use it as much. Or maybe, was it the red video? I can't remember. I think it was the red video. Maybe I did include it. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't use it very much. It's not on my main palette, but I know it's a very popular color. It's a reddish bordering on brown, like earthy red. Very similar to an Indian red, but transparent. Then we've got Burnt Umber. Somewhere. Oh, it's on the 18 color palette. Also a PBR 7. It's what you would expect from a burnt umber, which always makes me happy. It's one of my favorite colors. Very reliable, great for mixing grays with ultramarine. Then we've got Van Dyke Brown, and this was another interesting one with an interesting pigment number. So it's in BR8, which is, I wrote it down, it's a natural dye, and this is Van Dyke Brown. Most of the other Van Dyke Browns I've seen are made from PBR 7 or PBR 8 or something like that. So I don't know what the compositional differences are. Maybe the spin doctor can tell us. But it is that nice deep dark brown. Generally a fan of this color, as long as it's not too gray. There's some gray versions that I don't love, but otherwise I think it's a really beautiful, like middle tone between a burnt umber and a raw umber. I think it's can be, depending on the brand, a really nice medium between the two. Then we have Sepia, and the Sepia is made from PBR 7 in Lamp Black, so no ivory black. You're safe to use it if you are a vegan or like to paint with vegan art supplies. This version, as long as it dries with this type of intensity, I actually like this color a lot. It looks a little bit like raw umber. And the problem I have with most sepias is that they're too gray for my liking, but this one is still a nice, rich, dark brown. So we'll see when that dries. Last, for our regular colors, I have Payne's Gray. This is made from Lamp Black, Phthalo Blue, and Quinacridone Magenta. And you guys might remember, if you saw the Holbein video, I did not take the white or the black from Tiffany's 18 color set, so the black in there is Ivory Black, but I don't have it because I didn't get a sample of it. So that will not be in this review today. I should have probably put some water on this gold earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out my heat tool and dry this sheet off, let the water sit on the little gold paint dot. We'll come back, we'll do the gold, and then we'll take a look at everything together. All right, we have our one last color to do. So here I'll show it to you in the palette. I have not used their gold before, so we'll see what we can work up. Metallic colors usually take a little bit longer to reactivate than other paints. And this doesn't immediately scream like it's a juicy, creamy version, but we'll see. Working it up here. All right. It looks like a pretty neutral gold as well. I've seen some really, oh, it's a very weak gold though. I've seen some like very yellow golds, I've seen some very cool silvery golds, and this one looks somewhere in between. I'll put another drop of water in there, see if there's anything else we can get. This is definitely not an opaque color as it is standing right now. Let me zoom you in so you can see this better. Try and get some more off the palette here. It looks okay over black. I mean, it's not opaque, but it looks like you can tell the difference more, but on the white, it's pretty underwhelming. It might be nice if you were to mix it with other colors to give them like an iridescent shine to it. So let's see. I guess I'll mix it over here. Hardly getting any paint off of this. It's been sitting for over 2-3 minutes now. 4 minutes? Yeah. All the time I've been recording plus the time I wasn't recording. Let's go ahead and pull a cobalt green. That seafoamy green color. So let's see what that looks like when it dries. So I don't know how well you can see that. It does have a beautiful shine when you add it to other colors. So If you want to use this gold like to tint other colors and make them really shiny and metallic, I mean, that's certainly an option. I don't particularly love the way that this gold looks on its own, and it certainly isn't opaque if you want it for that type of application. But if you want it to glaze over other colors or to mix with other ones, it would probably be fine. I am no expert though in metallic paints. It's not my forte or anything that I have a ton of experience with, so take that with a grain of salt. But we can go ahead and go back over our whole list. Let me try and make this easier on myself. I'm like holding it up and you're not gonna be able to see that very well. So here we go. We're on the table and hopefully that'll be good. So the first three yellows here are pretty middle of the road. In terms of just overall hue, I do prefer the cadmium yellow light, but again, I don't like cadmium colors on my palette, so that might prevent me from wanting to add that. But it has a really beautiful tone to it, and it's also not too opaque. These other ones lack a little bit of personality, I think. The washes are a little bit on the flat side. Then I've got some cool yellows here, with the lemon yellow being the very coolest. This reminds me of a nickel Titanite yellow, the PY53. It's a newer color for me, but it's a very, very, very pale yellow color. These two are a little bit warmer, but still definitely on the cool side, both 3 pigment mixes. I would much rather have a PY175, which is Daniel Smith's single pigment lemon yellow, or even PY3, which is Hansa yellow light. When we move into our middle yellows, I like both of these options. I really like the permanent yellow deep. It reminds me a lot of my favorite PY54, but slightly on the warmer side. This reminds me of a new gamboge, but it does have those cadmium colors in it, and it's a little bit on the opaque side. This is a really nice bright orange, if you like that bright orange, but I also think it's pretty similar to an azo orange, so if you wanted a single pigment, there are other options. This is weird. I've never seen a PR108 that is this orange, but again, I'm not very versed in cadmium colors, so maybe there are other versions. It's a pretty weak orange as far as oranges go, but there's a little bit of texture in there, especially compared to the one next door. So a little bit opaque, but a soft orange if that's what you're looking for. This Quin Gold lacks a little bit of the vibrancy of the original quinacridone gold, which I'm trying to find. Do I have it nearby? Where on earth did it go? Aha, I found it. Okay, here's Daniel Smith's version. So you can see there's more luminosity, there's a little bit more body to the deeper tones. This one's a little bit more flat all around, but hue-wise, it's on the same page. It's definitely not that far off. We've got Brilliant Orange here, which is an incredibly, incredibly vibrant, I don't know if it's coming across on camera, but it's a super, super vibrant, vivid orange. It reminds me a bit of Mission Gold's Vermilion. We've got Cadmium Red Orange, which is another similar in hue, but a little bit more richer and earthier tone. Again, PR108. There's a tiny bit of texture here, but again, a cadmium color. We have Vermilion Hue, which is a nice, very neutral red, I would say. A little bit on the orange side. And then next door, we've got Pyrrole Red, which is PR254. This is actually a really transparent version now that it has dried. But it is cooler than the other Pyrrole Red that I have used. So this one's cooler, this one's a little bit more middle toned, but they're close. Then we've got Quinacridone Red, but this is really Quinacridone Rose, I think would be a more appropriate name. It's very, very pink. Cadmium Red Purple, which I'm not sure I understand the name of that. It leans, I mean, it's darker, I guess, but these tints look very orangey red to me. We've got Cad Red Deep, which I guess I like a little bit better. It's more middle toned, but I still, like, none of these 4 colors that they offer with the same pigments are colors that I feel like I need to add to my palette right away. Sorry that took a minute. I had like a little brain brain freeze there. So then we've got quinacridone Scarlet, which I don't think that's really named appropriately, but it's PR 209 and a good representation of that color, I think. Scarlet Lake, which is more of the orangey tone that we would expect to see. Opera, which is those bright fluorescent, not going to be light fast at all type colors. We have a beautiful version of Permanent Alizarin Crimson that I really, really like. This feels very similar to Da Vinci's PV19 version of Permanent Alizarin Crimson, although there is that second pigment in here. Here is our original Alizarin Crimson, but they call theirs Rose Madder. Crimson Lake is a really pretty color. It's a very deep purpley red, but their version is made with the 3 pigments again. Quinacridone Violet. Now that I see this dry, this is a bit darker than the other quinacridone violets that I have seen, so at least the ones made with PV19, so that's something to note there, but it's a really interesting shade of purple. Quinacridone Magenta, maybe a little bit less vibrant than some other brands. Bright Rose, it's got this texture to it, which if I was going to use a fluorescent pigment, I don't know why, but in my head it would be a really smooth color. But again, I'm not an authority on that color, so please don't take my word for it. This Bright Violet is kind of similar to a Cobalt Violet or a quinacridone Purple using PV55, except it's not light fast. It does have some texture though. Permanent Violet made from PV23. This is not quite as deep or as dark as the other versions of this color that I have seen, but if you don't like how intense the other version is, maybe that would be a good solution for you. Their Mineral Violet is a really pretty middle-of-the-road, slightly warm-leaning violet. This Cobalt Violet is gorgeous. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of cobalts or of granulation, but I am coming around to it quite a bit, and this is a beautiful, beautiful color. Next door is Cerulean Blue. I'm going to keep it up close so you can see the texture on that one as well. Then we've got Indigo, which is more blue than some other versions that I have used. Their PB60, which is in person, it looks comparable to other indenthrons that I've seen on my camera monitor. It does not look the same color, so we'll have to see what that looks like in post-production, but I'll try and edit it so that it's as close to the real color as possible. On my monitor, it looks like a bright blue rather than a deep blue. We've got Prussian Blue here, which I didn't fade it out very well, did I? But pretty saturated for that type of color. We've got Ultramarine Deep, which is a very granulating, warm version of Ultramarine. While we're up there, let's go ahead and take a look at the Ultramarine Light down below, which is a much more neutral version of that color. Same amount of granulation though. We have both versions of Phthalo Blue, so we have a red shade and a yellow shade. This is, now that it's dried, it does look more yellow. I will say that that is a pretty green yellow leaning version of that color. Love this Marine Blue. I'm falling more in love with PB16 the more and more I see it, and so I'm super thankful that I have a tube of the Winsor & Newton version that I can add to palettes as well to try out. We've got Cobalt Blue, which is a very light version of that color. Sorry, I'll set this down so it stops moving on you. Then we have Cobalt Blue Hue, which I don't think looks anything like the Cobalt here, but I don't know, I guess it's okay. I would still rather have like these two colors independently on my palette, and then if you needed something in between, like I don't know why this would be a useful color, you know. Then we have Compose Blue, which is just, again, another color that I don't think is super necessary. It might be nice to have if you want a convenient sky mixture. Then we've got PG7 mixed with PB15 for a turquoise blue. This is pretty opaque, but the color is really nice. It's a really even blend between blue and green. It's not quite as blue as some of the other turquoise mixtures are. And then next door we've got the Cobalt Turquoise Light, which is a really nice version of this color. Again, it's the same version that Graham uses for their Cobalt turquoise, or Cobalt Teal, as well as Turner uses the same color for their turquoise. We've got Manganese Blue Nova, which is PB15, but I think there's a white in there. Cobalt Green, it's a very seafoamy green color, definitely more green leaning than the turquoise blue. We've got some interesting greens here. Their Hooker's green is very, very, very bright. I don't think this is as dark as some other Hooker's greens that I've seen. We've got phthalo green that they call Viridian hue. They have Viridian, which is nice. It doesn't granulate quite as much as other Viridians I've seen, but it is a really pretty color. So I like that one a lot, actually. Then we've got sap green, which is actually, you guys, let's see. It's a really nice sap green. Let me pull this over here. Got a little space between them, but look at that. Here's the original sap green that I am in love with. Here is Daniel Smith's reformulation, and I don't feel like Holbein's is that far off. I feel like it is a little bit more yellow, and there's not quite as much texture in it, but it's a good runner-up. You guys are always asking me which sap green I recommend in its place. I still think I like the Daniel Smith reformulation best, but this is a very, very close second now. I'll have to see how it works in paintings. Then we've got these two very flat and not exciting, in my opinion, greens that I would much rather have any of these other greens on here than these two. Then we've got leaf green, which is a very, very, very bright yellowy green. We've got our two lovingly called baby poop greenish yellows here. This one being a lot more yellow, this one being more on the brown side. We've got one brilliant, which is, again, in my opinion, not a useful color. I'd rather just have some other colors on my palette that I could mix a color similar to that with. We've got two versions of yellow ochre. One is called raw sienna, one is called yellow ochre. I much, much prefer the raw sienna. Both of them are opaque, or at least semi-opaque. Can see that there, but there's a lot better texture, I think, in the raw sienna. It has more character. Then we've got burnt sienna, which is made from PBR7, but it's a very orange version of that color. We've got our Indian red and our Perylene maroon, which as they dried, they do look a little bit different in their hue, of course. I mentioned that Perylene maroon was similar to an Indian red, and I'll still stand by that they're similar in color, but this one is obviously much less saturated. This one is tremendously more transparent though, but I really love that color. Then we've got burnt umber, which is a beautiful representation of this color. I usually don't like when these colors are too warm or too cool. I like right in the middle, and this one is really close to the Daniel Smith one that I love so much. We've got Van Dyke brown, which actually has a really interesting texture to it since it has dried. See if it can focus there for you. I guess I would call it light granulation, but it's not a similar granulation pattern that I've seen in most other paints. Then we have our sepia, which I think is a really great dark brown. It's similar to a raw umber, but maybe even a little bit deeper, and I would be happy to add that to a palette. I think it's great. We've got Payne's Gray, which I don't use Payne's Gray very often. This one looks a little bit flat. It's a little bit on the blue leaning side, but I know a lot of Payne's Grays do lean to that blue. And then of course we have that gold last. Looks fine on the black. I don't like it very much on the white, but mixing it with other colors, you get a nice little glow there. So I hope that this was helpful in going through this Holbein swatch with me, and thank you again so much to my awesome community who has supplied me with just a miraculous resource of paints to share with all you guys. Be sure to check the description if you want to go ahead and visit their pages or anything like that, and I look forward to the next one. I know that there was an ask for a Schminke paint with me, a swatch with me one, and I need to try and get my hands on a dot card. They're a little bit hard to get in the US and they're pretty expensive, so I'm trying to find probably the 80 color one. The 140 is definitely out of my price range. I'll see what I can do about that, but let me know in the comments below if there's other browns that you'd like to see. I have around 30 colors of Da Vinci. I have around, I don't know, 25 core colors maybe. I think those are probably the American Journey. If I did with Da Vinci, I have some other American Journey colors, and American Journey is said to be the same type of paint as Da Vinci, so I could put those in the same video. But anyway, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of that, and I look forward to bringing you the next one. We'll have some other videos in between, and I look forward to sharing our next top 5 series with you, as well as some other reviews. So see you guys in the next video, and have a great day until then.